好，各位老师跟同学吗？还是全部都是同学？好，都有哈。在座的各位学员，大家早安。好，早，然后这个是我们华语师资班的第2周的上课行程。好，那我上的科目是汉语语言学，都有拿到讲义了吗？好 ，OK。那可以请问一下吗？为什么你们会来上这个师资班啊？对华语教学有兴趣吗？还是被强迫的？对啊，被强迫的吗？都是南艺大的学生吗？是吗？不是，那摇头的是？加大吗？嘉义大学吗？您是大学部的吗？
硕专班。
硕专班，硕专。那硕专班中文系的吗？
不是历史。
历史系，历史系。那中文系应该有开一些关于这个汉语语言学的科目。因为语言学的部分基本上会在我们各大专院校的中文系开课，各大专院校的中文系开课。那一般来讲1年级大概开的就是语言学概论，语言学概论，大概你会看到名字大概原则上都是大同小异，汉语语言学、语言学概论，或者是中国语言学、国音学，这些其实大同小异，原则上都大同小异。那如果说你特别的要去修一些师资班的学程的话，汉语语言学绝对是必修的，绝对是必修的。那慢慢一直到大学部3年级的话，会开生命学，生命学。那究竟语言学跟生命学有没有不太一样？那这个部分我们等一下都会来说明。那我想特别还要花周末的时间来上课，那原则上应该大家都是还蛮有兴趣，或者是未来可能想从事关于这个对外华语教学的这样的一块。那确实它算是一个还蛮显学的吧，或者是说还蛮热门的科目啦。尤其现在整个配合政府政策，所谓的新南向政策，那你怎么样去对外国人说所谓的教中文，或者是说怎么样可以把这个教华语当成你未来可能可以考虑的职业之一？那大概都知道说这个对外华语可能需要华语认证的这个考试，我们原则上这几周上的都是它的考试内容。那早期原则上不考英文的，不考英文，但是后来慢慢的，他觉得可能你对外国人的话，那英文可能还是必要的，必要的一个共同语言，所以他慢慢又加进了英文考试的科目。所以说，如果你对这个华语教学有兴趣的话，可能不只是我们这几周上课的科目啦，可能你自己本身的英语能力，可能还是需要注意的，因为这个都是考试的一个基本嘛，基本你还是要通过。然后讲义上面大概有我们的上课用书啦，不过我帮同学准备了，比较少的讲义，那可以推荐同学这一本，就是我们在上课用书的，这个大概是我在各大学原则上都会请同学，可能可以买，或者是你图书馆有，你就去借来看。这本书是林金喜跟舒兆明的《汉语语言学讲义》啦。那这本书比较贴近华语，因为它里面大概会有一些我们历届的华语的考试的题目，还有它会去说明解答。所以算是跟下面的这些参考书，比较讲学术性的，稍微有一些差别，所以你会发现说，下面的一些参考书，比汉语语言学啊，或者是现代汉语，那或者是语言学纲要，第4本的部分你也可以稍微打个星号，第4本是砖头书，讲得非常详细，很大很厚的一本。那是师大的这个谢国平老师的语言学概论，黄色题的。如果说你有兴趣，图书馆有的话，都可以去借来看，借来看。那因为我有稍微问一下这个系办主办单位啦，是说同学好像本身都没有接受这个中文系或者是跟任何语言学相关的训练，是不是？有吗？那上礼拜上课还听得懂吗？还可以吧。OK， 尽量，我想刚好有这个机会，你就去试试看。所以这本书，如果你真的未来想要考试，或者是未来想要走华语教学的这一条路的话，这本书其实还蛮推荐同学可以去看看。因为 它讲的也没有很详细，不会说太深入啦，那整个概念大概都有，你要再进而再去参考这些参考书籍都可以，都可以。那这个是专书上面的一个介绍，你会发现说整个题目大概都是大同小异，都是跟语言学相关的，那我们今天大概会先来上前面的3个单元，3个单元，大概早上的部分，那就慢慢说，慢慢说。那同学有任何问题，原则上都可以提问啦，都可以提问，我们就是比较轻松的上课方式，那问问同学一个问题，先有语言还是先有文字？为什么？人本身都可以发出声音，所以你觉得语言是优于文字的 ？OK， 先有文字。那有没有其他不同的看法？全部都是认为语言是比较早的，对不对？是不是？好，那为什么？有时候你去想想啦，我想我们现在台湾社会这个年代啦，原则上你的亲人大概都有受过教育。可是如果更早期的话，有没有不认识字的阿公妈妈？有嘛？但是他会不会说话？会啊，他的语言能力表达还是很好的，还是很好的，所以其实语言大概算是一个比较早的人跟人之间沟通的一个我们讲说桥梁吧，文字确实是到后来慢慢后代才产生的。中国历史上最早的文字可以推到什么时候？商代的什么？甲骨文。那往更早之前有没有文字？更早之前有没有文字？应该还是有，只是可能我们找不到，找不太到相关的证据啦，所以就文字来讲，其实更早其实只能推到商朝，但是你不能说商朝之前的人他们都不会说话，因为原则上语言基本上是一个人跟人之间沟通的一个桥梁啦，所以原则上语言还是先有的，所以语言大概算是会是我们讲说整个历史发展里面扮演还蛮重要的一个角色，那同学有听过 TED 吗 ？TED， TED， 那 TED 的平台我们现在在 YouTube 上面绝对都看得到，那它最早算是美国那边的一个提供分享交流的一个平台啦，慢慢觉得说这样的一个平台不只是各方面的专家都可以上去发表，加上它的一个时间大概都是抓在18分钟左右，18分钟左右，所以原则上你都可以去听听看各行各业，甚至某些领域比较专门的人才他们怎么来发表他们自己的一些想法，然后在2011年左右这个TED引进台湾。所以你在YouTube 上面你其实可以写 TED 啦，TED 乘台北，台北，然后你可以去看看我们台湾目前也是有各行各业还蛮优秀的一些人士上去讲，现在陆陆续续都还有在举办。目前我如果没有记错的话，TED 台北点阅率最高的好像是我们的柯文哲市长，他在聊那个生死的智慧，确实有时候你自己闲来无事好奇啦，对你方面这方面其实有兴趣，就是放着让他讲嘛，你就听听，我觉得这个算是一种有时候课后的一个延伸啦，课后的一个学习延伸，那我们现在大概来看看，大概也是十几分钟，这个是马克·佩格。他的一个题目叫做“语言如何改变人类”，我们来看看他的一个观点吧。
Each of you possesses the most powerful, dangerous, subversive trait that natural selection has ever devised. It's a piece of neural audio technology for rewiring other people's minds. I'm talking about your language, of course, because it allows you to implant a thought from your mind directly into someone else's mind. And they can attempt to do the same to you without either of you having to perform surgery. Instead, when you speak, you're actually using a form of telemetry, not so different from the remote control device for your television. It's just that whereas that device relies on pulses of infrared light, your language relies on pulses, discrete pulses of sound. And just as you use the remote control device to alter the internal settings of your television to suit your mood, you use your language to alter the settings inside someone else's brain to suit your interests. Language is our genes talking, getting things that they want. And just imagine the sense of wonder in a baby when it first discovers that merely by uttering sound, it can get objects to move across a room as if by magic, and maybe even into its mouth. Now, language's subversive power has been recognized throughout the ages in censorship, in books you can't read, phrases you can't use, and words you can't say. In fact, the Tower of Babel story in the Bible is a fable and warning about the power of language. According to that story, early humans developed the conceit that by using their language to work together, they could build a tower that would take them all the way to heaven. Now, God, angered at this attempt to usurp his power, destroyed the tower, and then to ensure that it would never be rebuilt, he scattered the people by giving them different languages, confused them by giving them different languages. And this leads to the wonderful irony that our languages exist to prevent us from communicating. Even today, we know that there are words we cannot use, phrases we cannot say, because if we do so, we might be accosted, jailed, or even killed. And all of this from a puff of air emanating from our mouths. Now, all this fuss about a single one of our traits tells us there's something worth explaining. And that is how and why this remarkable trait evolved, and why did it evolve only in our species? Now, it's a little bit of a surprise that to get an answer to that question, we have to go to tool use in the chimpanzees. Now, these chimpanzees are using tools, and we take that as a sign of their intelligence. But if they really were intelligent, why would they use a stick to extract termites from the ground rather than a shovel? And if they really were intelligent, why would they crack open nuts with a rock? Why wouldn't they just go to a shop and buy a bag of nuts that somebody else had already cracked open for them? Why not? I mean, that's what we do. Now, the reason that chimpanzees don't do that is that they lack what psychologists and anthropologists call social learning. They seem to lack the ability to learn from others by copying, or imitating, or simply watching. As a result, they can't improve on others' ideas, or learn from others' mistakes, benefit from others' wisdom. And so they just do the same thing over and over and over again. In fact, we could go away for 1 million years and come back, and these chimpanzees would be doing the same thing, with the same sticks for the termites and the same rocks to crack open nuts. Now, this may sound arrogant or even full of hubris. How do we know this? Because this is exactly what our ancestors, the Homo erectus, did. These upright apes evolved on the African savanna about 2 million years ago, and they made these splendid hand axes that fit wonderfully into your hands. But if we look at the fossil record, we see that they made the same hand axe over and over and over again for 1 million years. We can follow it through the fossil record. Now, if we make some guesses about how long Homo erectus lived, what their generation time was, that's about 40,000 generations of parents to offspring and other individuals watching in which that hand axe didn't change. It's not even clear that our very close genetic relatives, the Neanderthals, had social learning. Sure enough, their tools were more complicated than those of Homo erectus, but they too showed very little change over the 300,000 years or so that those species, the Neanderthals, lived in Eurasia. Okay, so what this tells us is that contrary to the old adage, monkey see, monkey do, the surprise really is that all of the other animals really cannot do that. At least not very much. And even this picture has this suspicious taint of being rigged about it, something from a Barnum Bailey circus. But by comparison, we can learn. We can learn by watching other people and copying or imitating what they can do. We can then choose from among a range of options the best one. We can benefit from others' ideas. We can build on their wisdom. And as a result, our ideas do accumulate, and our technology progresses. And this cumulative cultural adaptation, as anthropologists call this accumulation of ideas, is responsible for everything around you in your bustling and teeming everyday lives. I mean, the world has changed out of all proportions to what we would recognize even 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. And all of this because of cumulative cultural adaptation. The chairs you're sitting in, the lights in this auditorium, my microphone, the iPads and iPods that you carry around with you, all the result of cumulative cultural adaptation. Now, to many commentators, cumulative cultural adaptation or social learning is job done. End of story. Our species can make stuff, therefore we prospered in a way that no other species has. In fact, we can even make the stuff of life, as I just said, all the stuff around us. But in fact, it turns out that sometime around 200,000 years ago, when our species first arose and acquired social learning, that this was really the beginning of our story, not the end of our story. Because our acquisition of social learning would create a social and evolutionary dilemma, the resolution of which, it's fair to say, would determine not only the future course of our psychology, but the future course of the entire world. And most importantly for this, it will tell us why we have language. And the reason that dilemma arose is it turns out that social learning is visual theft. If I can learn by watching you, I can steal your best ideas, and I can benefit from your efforts without having to put in the time and energy that you did into developing them. If I can watch which lure you use to catch a fish, or I can watch how you flake your hand axe to make it better, or if I follow you secretly to your mushroom patch, I can benefit from your knowledge and wisdom and skills, and maybe even catch that fish before you do. Social learning really is visual theft, and in any species that acquired it, it would behoove you to hide your best ideas lest somebody steal them from you. And so, sometime around 200,000 years ago, our species confronted this crisis. And we really had only two options for dealing with the conflicts that visual theft would bring. One of those options was that we could have retreated into small family groups, because then the benefits of our ideas and knowledge would flow just to our relatives. Had we chosen this option sometime around 200,000 years ago, we would probably still be living like the Neanderthals were when we first entered Europe 40,000 years ago. This is because in small groups there are fewer ideas, there are fewer innovations, and small groups are more prone to accidents and bad luck. So if we'd chosen that path, our evolutionary path would have led into the forest and been a short one indeed. The other option we could choose was to develop the systems of communication that would allow us to share ideas and to cooperate amongst others. Choosing this option would mean that a vastly greater fund of accumulated knowledge and wisdom would become available to any one individual than would ever arise from within an individual family or an individual person on their own. Well, we chose the second option, and language is the result. Language evolved to solve the crisis of visual theft. Language is a piece of social technology for enhancing the benefits of cooperation, for reaching agreements, for striking deals, and for coordinating our activities. And you can see that in a developing society that was beginning to acquire language, not having language would be like a bird without wings. Just as wings open up the sphere of air for birds to exploit, language opened up the sphere of cooperation for humans to exploit. And we take this utterly for granted because we're a species that is so at home with language, but you have to realize that even the simplest acts of exchange that we engage in are utterly dependent upon language. And to see why, consider two scenarios from early in our evolution. Let's imagine that you are really good at making arrowheads, but you're hopeless at making the wooden shafts with the flight feathers attached. Two other people you know are very good at making the wooden shafts, but they're hopeless at making the arrowheads. So what you do is, one of those people has not really acquired language yet. Let's presume the other one is good at language skills. So what you do one day is you take a pile of arrowheads and you walk up to the one that can't speak very well, and you put the arrowheads down in front of him, hoping he'll get the idea that you want to trade your arrowheads for finished arrows. But he looks at the pile of arrowheads, thinks they're a gift, picks them up, smiles, and walks off. And you pursue this guy, gesticulating, a scuffle ensues, and you get stabbed with one of your own arrowheads. Okay, now replay the scene now, and you're approaching the one who has language. You put down your arrowheads and say, I'd like to trade these arrowheads for finished arrows. I'll split you 50-50. Another one says, fine, looks good to me, we'll do that. Now the job is done. Once we have language, we can put our ideas together and cooperate to have a prosperity that we couldn't have before we acquired it. And this is why our species has prospered around the world while the rest of the animals sit behind bars and zoos languishing. And that's why we build space shuttles and cathedrals while the rest of the world sticks into the ground to extract termites. All right, now if this view of language and its value in solving the crisis of visual theft is true, any species that acquires it should show an explosion of creativity and prosperity. And this is exactly what the archaeological record shows. If you look at our ancestors, the Neanderthals and the Homo erectus, our immediate ancestors, they're confined to small regions of the world. But when our species arose about 200,000 years ago, sometime after that, we quickly walked out of Africa and spread around the entire world, occupying nearly every habitat on Earth. Now, whereas other species are confined to places that their genes adapt them to, with social learning and language, we could transform the environment to suit our needs. And so we prospered in a way that no other animal has. Language really is the most potent trait that has ever evolved. It is the most valuable trait we have for converting new lands and resources into more people and their genes that natural selection has devised. Language really is the voice of our genes. Now, having evolved language, though, we did something peculiar, even bizarre. As we spread out around the world, we developed thousands of different languages. Currently, there are about 7,000 or 8,000 different languages spoken on Earth. Now, you might say, well, this is just natural. As we diverge, our languages are naturally going to diverge. But the real puzzle and irony is that the greatest density of different languages on Earth is found where people are most tightly packed together. If we go to the island of Papua New Guinea, we can find about 800 to 1,000 distinct human languages, different human languages spoken on that island alone. There are places on that island where you can encounter a new language every 2 or 3 miles. Now, incredible as this sounds, I once met a Papuan man and I asked him if this could possibly be true. And he said to me, oh no, they're far closer together than that. And it's true, there are places on that island where you can encounter a new language in under a mile. This is also true of some remote oceanic islands. And so it seems that we use our language not just to cooperate, but to draw rings around our cooperative groups and to establish identities, and perhaps to protect our knowledge and wisdom and skills from eavesdropping from outside. And we know this because when we study different language groups and associate them with their cultures, we see that different languages slow the flow of ideas between groups. They slow the flow of technologies, and they even slow the flow of genes. Now, I can't speak for you, but it seems to be the case that we don't have sex with people we can't talk to. Now, we have to counter that, though, against the evidence we've heard that we might have had some rather distasteful genetic dalliances with the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. Okay, this tendency we have, this seemingly natural tendency we have towards isolation, towards keeping to ourselves, crashes headfirst into our modern world. This remarkable image is not a map of the world. In fact, it's a map of Facebook friendship links. And when you plot those friendship links by their latitude and longitude, it literally draws a map of the world. Our modern world is communicating with itself and with each other more than it has at any time in its past. And that communication, that connectivity around the world, that globalization now raises a burden because these different languages impose a barrier, as we've just seen, to the transfer of goods and ideas and technologies and wisdom, and they impose a barrier to cooperation. And nowhere do we see that more clearly than in the European Union, whose 27 member countries speak 23 official languages. The European Union is now spending over 1 billion euros annually translating among their 23 official languages. That's something on the order of 1.45 billion US dollars on translation costs alone. Now think of the absurdity of this situation. If 27 individuals from those 27 member states sat around a table speaking their 23 languages, some very simple mathematics will tell you that you need an army of 253 translators to anticipate all the pairwise possibilities. The European Union employs a permanent staff of about 2,500 translators, and in 2007 alone, and I'm sure there are more recent figures, something on the order of 1.3 million pages were translated into English alone. And so, if language really is the solution to the crisis of visual theft, if language really is the conduit of our cooperation, the technology that our species derived to promote the free flow of an exchange of ideas, in our modern world we confront a question. And that question is whether, in this modern globalized world, we can really afford to have all these different languages. Put it this way, nature knows no other circumstance in which functionally equivalent traits coexist. One of them always drives the other extinct. And we see this in the inexorable march towards standardization. There are lots and lots of ways of measuring things, weighing them and measuring their length, but the metric system is winning. There are lots and lots of ways of measuring time, but a really bizarre base 60 system known as hours and minutes and seconds is nearly universal around the world. There are many, many ways of imprinting CDs or DVDs, but those are all being standardized as well. And you could probably think of many, many more in your own everyday lives. And so, our modern world now is confronting us with a dilemma, and it's the dilemma that this Chinese man faces, whose language is spoken by more people in the world than any other single language. And yet, he is sitting at his blackboard converting Chinese phrases into English language phrases. And what this does is it raises the possibility to us that in a world in which we want to promote cooperation and exchange, in a world that might be dependent more than ever before on cooperation to maintain and enhance our levels of prosperity, his actions suggest to us that it might be inevitable that we have to confront the idea that our destiny is to be one world with one language. Thank you.
好，这个是 TED 上面马克佩格他讲的语言如何改变人类其实讲了这么多，其实他讲的重点大概就2个嘛语言其实可以促进人类进步但是促进人类进步的同时，好像慢慢为了争权夺利开始有了全世界7000到8000多种不同的语言所以好像语言又成为了一种所谓的阻隔人跟人之间沟通的一个桥梁所以就像水一样水可以载舟，好像水又可以覆舟的感觉不过里面大概也提到了啦全世界人口最多的是什么人对啊，华人嘛你就整个大中华文化圈加起来的话确实是所谓的华语才是全世界应该使用最多的语言，但是为什么全世界共同语言是英文？为什么？比较强势，经济比较强势，这个大家都是重点所以你会发现里面的举例，中国人其实本来应该是华语使用最多的人种，但是他却不断把华语翻成英文，所以其实会发现全世界